topics. We have NEZF financial support. Sam, I believe you're in here. Do you want to speak since you brought that one up?
Yeah, sure. Morning, everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm an addict, and I'm the regional delegate for the Northern New England region. And I just brought this up yesterday during my report. Northern New England region made the decision at its last RSC to do an 80-20 fund flow split between NA World Services and the NEZF for the next calendar year. We did that after we did a fair amount of fact finding regarding how other zonal forums are funded by regions through financial contributions or fund flow. And we found that there's a shift within the fellowship as a whole for regions to split their fund flow between NA World Service and the NEZF. And so Northern New England sort of carries with it its first formal fund flow to the NEZF here today. We sort of see the NEZF as having real expenses that need to be covered by its member regions, including a Zoom license, a website, and trusted servant travel to the extent that members of the administrative body are not delegates funded by by their respective regions. And so we have real expenses we have to cover. And we also now have two standing subcommittees who may have projects that provide value to our member regions, and we ought to think about how we fund those. So I guess it's just a call out to other member regions to think about how we support the NEZF financially. And I understand that, you know, with all the all that's going on around the globe, folks are lower on cash than they typically have available to them. And so this may just be sort of a placeholder for a future date when regional funding is more available to split between NA World Services and the NECF. But I just wanted to bring it up and have an open discussion about it. That's all.
All right, thank you. Anyone? Okay, Sandy, you're up. Please raise your hand to go into the queue. But Sandy, you're up.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Sandy. I'm running for RD, but I was RD like a while ago. I took a few cycles off. And when I was doing it before, like this push for the zones to get going in the United States was one of the big topics. And partially it was motivated by a push for zonal seating. I don't know if that's still something going on, but and at that time, my region didn't have a lot of utility for the zone, because our areas and regions, unlike like the EDM or the Asia Pacific Forum, our regions and areas are pretty dense with services. So we don't really need a lot of services from the zone, because we have, not every area is totally functioning, but most of them are, and the region functions pretty well. So what the EDM groups and the Asia Pacific groups go to the zone for, we already deliver at the region for the most part, right? So when this whole thing started, and I, you know, I still see this, and now this is really evidence of this, is that if you really beef up the zones, you're going to suck trusted servants and fund flow from world and locals, right? Now you're not going to have a regional position. You're going to have a zonal position, which leaves the region short. So they're going to suck area people. And the same thing with money. NAWS is saying we need money, we need money. Now we got 20% of our fund flow going to a zone that it's just, do we really want to create another level of service in every way, which means that we have fund flow and trusted servants being sucked from other levels of service? Are we going to create a whole nother level of service here? And if we do, why? Especially like I said, in the Northeast, at least where I am, we're not like totally stacked with service, but we pretty much are functioning. So I don't know what we would really need from the zone other than interesting things to look at videos and things like that. But anyway, I'm going to get some pushback, I think, from ABCD, but maybe I'm wrong. Thank you.
Bob, then Nancy.
Good morning. Yeah, I mean, welcome, Sandy. It's good to see you. A lot has happened, you know, in World Services since that time. I mean, the zone thing is happened already, you know, so it's not like happening, it's happened. And one of the things I would just say, I mean, it's just a like FYI. I appreciate the gesture of funding by a region, like a voluntary funding to the NEZF. The Greater New York region did that during this cycle already to the NEZF. But because it's being done in somewhat of an uncoordinated manner, there still really isn't a firm plan about how the NEZF funds things that we would like to do. And there's definitely things that, you know, that are niche things that the NEZF could do. I mean, so, I mean, just one of the things that came up when the Eastern New York region and the Greater New York region made a financial contribution beyond the obligatory sort of funds that we decided were needed by the NEZF, you know, those funds ended up funding the trusted servants to the, you know, to attend the face-to-face NEZF meeting, as opposed to we were hoping that, you know, we would get to the point where we'd have some money that would empower the NEZF to actually do some kind of direct services. So, I mean, it depends on how many people we have on the admin body who need funding, but that was like a big chunk of money that rather than us having excess funds to be able to do maybe say public relation event or send one of our trusted servants to a multi-zonal event or whatever we might choose to do or do a workshop of some sort. It just went to funding the admin body to the NEZF, and it didn't really, you know, do anything directly for services to the regions or to the local communities. I mean, so I like the idea of a region, you know, like making a gesture or even developing a policy, but wouldn't it be great if we could, in a coordinated manner, develop some kind of strategic planning or planning. Maybe it comes up today where some sort of motion or some idea would come up where we would get like a coordinated effort of funding of some sort, because this thing of like individual regions doing things, as I said, it's a great idea and it's a nice gesture, but it doesn't really address the NEZF funding thing in a systemic way. So, you know, I'm not going to be the RD here for too much longer. This will be something that will, you know, run its course over the next, you know, maybe during this cycle and everything. But yeah, it's just something that we should think about in a unified manner, as opposed to, you know, one person or one region, you know, stepping up and donating a little bit. It still doesn't really empower these standing committees, which we have developed in the last cycle. So that was just like, you know, feedback into the thing. I think it's a great thing that people are, you know, thinking about funding, and we should consider it on a, you know, a broader way, because I mean, the zone is definitely in a place to do things. And, you know, I mean, even like this thing of a service symposium or other things like that, which are being done outside the zone, or things that, you know, car workshops, when things come up, us being able to do that in a unified manner, as opposed to, things being taken outside the NEZF that really fit the scope of the NEZF. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Real quick, on my end, I can point out, it was brought up last night that there's very likely a proposal coming to initiate a strategic planning cycle for April. So this sounds like something that would be fed into that. I can also speak from experience from being the NEZF secretary 7-8 years ago, showing up to the NEZF multiple times unfunded and spending 500 or so and getting 100 back to cover my travel. And then as one of the NEZF unfunded trusted servants now, when we have a face-to-face meeting, it's already in our guidelines that we cover our base expenses of Zoom, website, and trusted servants. If there's anything left over, it carries over. So we've actually had a little bit of carryover, but not a lot. Some of that carryover did help cover some of the recent PR conference. Even though there was additional donations sent in for that, we had enough to cover that, the extended Zoom license for that. And the other point on pulling servants or funds from, or another layer of service, I think part of the struggle that the zones have had for years, and this is discussed here and discussed at the US multi-zonal, and we'll probably discuss later with the collaboration with the AZF, is zones aren't supposed to cookie cutter regions. Regions aren't supposed to cookie cutter areas. Each is supposed to find its way to help support the service bodies that are its members in being stronger. So the task the zone has is what services can it provide that are of value to its members that aren't already provided? How do we make each other stronger? How do we learn from each other? How do we amplify each other's strengths and draw down on each other's weaknesses? So each layer of service has a niche, has something that it can do, and our challenge is finding that in a way that's not already done. I have Nancy, then Melvina, then Sam, then James.
Hey guys, I'm an addict named Nancy, RD, New Jersey. Good morning. I hate mornings. So I brought this up in my report, and I'll just share a tiny bit about where New Jersey is on this topic. So I threw it out and suggested we make a motion about fund flow, and which engaged a discussion, and quite a heavy one. So part of what I was trying to ascertain was, our region was had submitted a proposal years ago, right, to establish subcommittees within the zone to fill the void that was left from World, right? That, some of us know what happened with that, but we were in support of making the PIPR committee official. Fellowship development is now brand new. So I think the engagement of the discussion was to be, okay, so if the areas are supportive of, forming this, forming that, committees that are going to be doing some work, part of support of that is financial. Trying to, our focus really on the zone. Okay, the zone is here, things are happening, service structure of it is growing. So what we want to try to guide our participation is in how do we garner each other's resources and energy and experience to support the local community, support, how we can better collaborate together, all of us bordering regions. This is a nuanced conversation though in today's environment, because everything is happening on Zoom. So there are, it's a brand new endeavor for the Northeast Zone. We're doing everything virtually. So other than a Zoom account, what really do we need? So that's why we pretty much had decided it was premature. And there is some concern about, money hoarding, right? Which is, I'm not saying that, lack of a better term, only because, if you look at even in our state, between the areas and the regions, and they all have prudent reserves, and you know, and money is tight. So one of the things that New Jersey also just completed is a review of, if we were not, because donations are down everywhere, if we were to not receive another penny of donation from any area or fundraiser, how long would the money that we have sustain us if we never got another penny of income? So we are financially strong, and we could go more than a year without another penny, and that's paying every single expense that we have always paid: insurance and all the service helpline, website expenses, every expense we've ever had. So it's a difficult time to have this conversation, but the areas were incredibly receptive to this idea. And, you know, one of the conversations that has always been a challenge for us years ago with the zone is hosting it is a heavy expense. And a lot of the areas wanted to know, well, what are we getting out of this? You know, a bunch of people gather and talk. So we are excited about the idea of having tangible benefits to the local NA communities coming out of the zone. It's an exciting thing. But yet, where's it going to go and how's it going to happen is still really vague, right? Because we're in this weird spot in society, right? So we just wanted to plant the seed, have the conversations and the dialogue continue. That part of supporting an effort means to provide the resources needed, including money. And the conversation was engaged and interesting and positive. So we as a region are willing to continue that conversation to support the efforts, but we decided it's premature right now because of societal conditions. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you. Lavina?
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Lavina Addict, NECF PR chair. So I wanted to, before I talk about fund flow as it relates to Eastern New York region, I'm actually the AD there. I wanted to talk a little bit about, first of all, addressing the concerns that that Sandy brought up. And I've been to EDM and APF. Despite meeting density that you mentioned in our zone, there are actually significant gaps in service in almost every region. Not every region has a PR chair. I've actually reached out multiple times, and actually in the last couple of days, I've contacted every single region, and the NECF PR has been meeting every single month for almost 4 years. We've had nobody from ABCD ever come. There are multiple gaps, and I think one of the reasons when you mention why would we have zonal services and what are the points of that, over the last several years, the NEZF has supported local and regional service efforts in public relations. We supported Greater New York Region in their Professionals Day at their convention. We supported the Finger Lakes area in their Professionals Day. And when I say support, there were members from PR all over the zone that showed up in person, that made phone calls behind the scenes, that sent emails out, that sent hard copy literature. Also, there's a major gap in H&I services right now. There's some areas that currently, some regions that, and areas that either do not have any PR people, committees of one, or no H&I services going on. So one of the things in terms of service delivery, it's not another level of service, it's a complementary supportive effort that actually helps to coordinate and do things on a wider level. So one of the things I wanted to mention, for example, that is on the, it's been on the table for the zonal participation of PR is a pharmacy project. Pharmacy projects can only be coordinated throughout the zone. Pharmacies have district managers. So when you talk about reaching out to pharmacies to let our helpline number be distributed, they only are in contact with representatives from a district. So it's not another level of service, it's a coordinating level. So in kind of segueing, making a segue to the fund flow, Eastern New York region actually was responsible for a major donation that was tied into the purchase of merchandise, right? Eastern New York region put seed money together to purchase zonal t-shirts that were sold out at our last face-to-face zone, and we were actually able to turn that into $600 donation. So really the question about also merchandise purchasing, right? It's something that's probably going to come back up in the next strategic plan for the Public Relations Committee. We did take a look. I didn't present it to the committee formally, but it's possible to get masks made with the zonal logo on there, and do some kind of merchandise. I also know that Eastern New York, we had we regularly have presentations outside of our zone come and sit on our agenda. So we've had several people from NEZF and including NESA come and do presentations to our zone. We had a presentation on to our region. So we had a presentation about consensus-based decision making from the Fellowship Development Chair. We discussed that. We had a presentation from NESA, and actually resulting in a motion that our groups are voting on for a $200 donation to NESA that actually is tied into a registration being paid for some of our trusted servants, for our RDs to go there and learn about service training. That motion is coming back next month. And so what I wanted to say about that, Eastern New York, we've been, looking very carefully at our funding situation as well. And, we recently purchased something like 6 different Zoom accounts so that we could have a, they're going to talk about it later this afternoon in the COVID session, but we created a virtual newcomer packets for groups that were not on Zoom, and to actually help bring up the participation by purchasing these separate Zoom accounts. So our region has put money back in, and all of our, our subcommittees have been meeting on Zoom. We've been meeting regularly, but that newcomer packet also involved training. So whether or not we're going to be looking at other fund flow, I think subcommittees like PR could really start to take a look at perhaps doing a merchandising segment again, so that we could be a little more self-supporting in that respect. Eastern New York did make our regular donation. It was $30. I know that was sent in, and that'd probably be reviewed during the Sunday session. But I just wanted to just end by saying that, I don't think this zone is another level of service. It's a level of service, and it's also other zones in the United States. As vice chair, I participated with Dennis. The zones are meeting. The zones, U.S. zones, have already met about 4 different times. I think that, in closing with these remarks, if the other regions would be willing to vote to have liaison positions to the zone. What we need to do is open up participation. I think one of the concerns that Sandy might have been making was having like an elite little club of people that are participating. I think what we're talking about doing is opening up participation so that other people will be able to go in and weigh in on what is happening in the rest of the zones, because there are zones who are participating and other zones are just kind of being left behind, and they've articulated that. They're saying that they wish they were able to give supportive services out for PR and H&I. And actually, what we also need to be looking at is zonal H&I, because there's a big gap right now with that. So I know I did a lot of talking, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we got Sam and James, and we've used up a third of our time on that. Well, actually 30 minutes because we had the previous topic, but if you could keep it relatively brief.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Sam Monatic, and I think this is a super useful discussion and appreciate and agree with like what basically everyone has shared. I guess what I just wanted to add was that I totally agree. I totally agree with Wolfina. Northern New England has no standing subcommittees. I got to the NEZF from Northern New England, small rural region in 2016, and the first thought I had was, how can I use this massive resource of experience to bring value to my local fellowship? And we've been attending, for example, PR. Our member areas attend zonal PR regularly and have gotten a great amount of value from it. So I do think there's gaps in service that are being filled by this service body and are a complement and not a competitor. The other thing I would say is that, I agree with Bob that, the way that I imagine strategic planning working is that, so I'd like to make a proposal on Sunday to start our strategic planning process for the coming 2 cycles. And typically what comes out of a strategic plan is a budget and a funding need, so that we all can look around the room and say, like, here's what it takes to do what we intend to do over the next couple of years. And that can sort of give us a scope of what the financial need is. And I share your concern, Bob. We've got this competing issue of, well, now we have 4 admin body positions, and if we're all traveling, then there's a fair amount of expense associated just with bringing the non-delegate admin body people around the Northeast to the events. And so we just need to be thoughtful about what those budget items is and what it means financially when we decide to put a non-delegate in an admin body position. And that's not because we don't want people to participate, but it has a legitimate financial impact on the services we want to provide. And I guess the last thing I want to say is that, so Northern New England, we did a bunch of research, and this sort of split of fund flow between the zone and NA World Services is like, I polled like 20 or 25 or 30 regions, and this is like the most common fund flow split. And Northern New England, we're not trying to like go it alone or anything. What we're trying to do is like set an example of like, this is doable and it's not that deep, and we should all be thinking of ways to support our zone. And so, we encourage other regions to think about providing regular support for the region, and so for the zone. And so yeah, I appreciate you guys taking the time to have this conversation and sort of letting this topic have the floor, because I think it's important. So I look forward to the strategic planning process and the budgeting process that will follow, and I hope it is instructive for how our regions continue to support the zone in the future. So thanks.
Thank you. James?
Good morning, everybody. I'm an addict. My name is James, and I really am enjoying this conversation greatly. the New England region has a really strong will towards supporting the growth and expansion of what's possible within the zone. You know, most notably, originally with PR and the ability to help and support our member regions, even our member areas, but then the looming awesome possibility of also supporting a zonal H&I effort in ways that you know, regions just simply can't. There are certain national initiatives with H&I that could be taken on by a zonal H&I program. But I think it's interesting also to note that what we have with the really new development in fellowship development, which is developing our human resource. You know, in area service and in regional service, the resource that is always the scarcest is that of qualified, trusted servants. And with the HRP that's developing, what we have there is really an awesome opportunity to match talent to task. You put the HRP together with a solid strategic plan. The only thing missing is fund flow. And that's, you know, sort of the engine that drives the effort. In our area, we have thrown a lot of support behind fellowship development. It's a place where almost all of our former delegates and alternate delegates go to serve, and that becomes a huge resource pool when we're also participating at the zonal level. So we're going to take a serious look at this split. Also, you know, we are of the opinion that as things roll out with COVID, that we will be going to a hybrid model for a long time. We have a number of our members who are immunocompromised that simply can't go back to live meetings until there's a viable vaccine. So, you know, in a hybrid model, it makes sense to support the zone because the actual real-time cost, if we're staying in this model right here, is not as great. So we're definitely in support of it.
Thank you. I tentatively put down closed. Was there anyone that had any particular questions that has not spoken yet, or anyone that has something that needs to be said that has not spoken yet, specifically that has not spoken yet? Nope. Okay. Next up, we have Region brought up the topic of an area using regional tax exempt status as an issue. Stephen, would you like to speak to that?
Hi, name's Stephen. Grateful to be here. And this topic has been brought up twice. Pardon me, I'm in the middle of moving, settling in. And it stems from areas in our region organizing and performing their own conventions with some degrees of success. And in an attempt to kind of capture as much fund flow as possible, and you know, the use of resources that come from these successful conventions, the question of areas using the region's tax exempt status for these events has been something we've been discussing for a while, and we're getting a lot of pushback on the regional level, particularly from members who aren't as professionally savvy with using this type of service for larger events within the region. And we're getting a lot of obstacles with it. And we would like some clarification just to bring back to the region for the areas from the zone. So not only are we looking for a direction and maybe a solution to this, you know, to kind of eliminate the obstacles that some people are putting up for these areas, because these functions are going to go on. The areas are kind of committed to performing conventions, especially Buffalo area and the Niagara Falls area. I'm sure with others to follow, we have an area that kind of, well, it's on the Pennsylvania. It's in Pennsylvania, and I could see some benefit to them having conventions too. So we would like to, as I said, provide a solution, hopefully, or direction from the zone to show not only that this is something that can be used for our member areas, but that the region actually went and received some experience, strength, and hope from the zone and brought it back to the region and to the areas. I think it's just a good way to demonstrate the effectiveness of the zone. And it can also just clear this up and definitely free up some time on the regional level, because it's become a hot topic, and it's only going to continue. So any experience, strength, and hope would be greatly appreciated. Our treasurer is listening in, and Troy asked me if we are a 501c, and I've been trying to find that information out. So as soon as we have that, we can move forward with any kind of experience, strength, and hope anyone has. The RD, which is me, and the RDA will probably jump in with questions and answers as well. So thanks.
Thank you. And hands up for members with experience, questions, so on. John.
I don't necessarily have experience with a tax exempt status if you're a 501, tax exempt charitable organization, but I have some, owning my own business and having that status. And I can tell you that if you have, a tax exempt status as a business owner, that raises the costs of your overall, income, showing that you're using the tax stamp. What I would say to you is that you should talk to an accountant and find out if you have an accountant, and spend a little bit of money, because if it raises your tax status as a region, now all of a sudden you have area conventions using that, you could open a can of worms for yourself. Or on the other hand, if the region got the tax status with the intent of letting the areas within the region or other areas maybe that aren't in your region use it, then it could be a good thing where, you could be helping them out. You can't really guarantee that the convention would be successful one way or another. And that even if it were successful, that they would say, well, here you go for letting us use your tax status. We're going to give you X number of dollars. And then there's always going to be those people that might not be happy with the amount of money they decided they're going to give you. So maybe an agreement needs to be drawn up if you do this. That would just be my opinion only. Thank you.
Thank you. Nancy.
Hey, I'm an addict named Nancy. Hey, Stephen, so I'm not going to talk too long about this. I have direct experience with this issue. We have an entity in New Jersey that is 501c3 tax exempt, and I chaired that for several years. We had several issues come up where other NA entities wanted to use our status, mostly to save sales tax. Okay, that was the biggest issue, and they were looking to save money. So we did a deep dive. We called it a fourth step. And what we learned is that in the state of New Jersey, a trustee of a 501c3 has some very specific demands and expectations, and that some of these requests and transactions could be in violation of state law as to the transaction of, was it had to benefit what the actual primary purpose of the entity was. So there were a lot of gray areas, and at the end of the day, we had decided that it was too much of an ask that those of us that would be signing the checks or the papers or approving the transactions to be potentially stepping beyond our legal bounds as a trustee of that specific entity, that we decided against it. So these hundreds of dollars here and hundreds of dollars there that might save this other NA entity sales tax dollars could be putting our trusted servants in a precarious situation. Each state's laws are different. I'm in New Jersey, you're in New York. So I would just implore you to look into that, to look beyond just the dollars and cents of what could be saved in these sales tax transactions. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. James?
Attic name James. So I have about
Can
4 to 6
Can I-
years.
Hold on.
I just have a clarifying question to Nancy real quick, James.
Go ahead.
Was Nancy's body that she referred to a zone, or I mean a region or an area?
It was our regional convention is a 501.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, James.
Not a problem. So there's a distinction between a federal tax status and a state tax service status. And in the New England region, we are geographically, for all intents and purposes, the state of Massachusetts and the state of Rhode Island. We have a 501c3, which exempts us from federal tax, but we still have to pay sales tax in the state where the transaction happens, and that's really only our regional meeting lists, hard copy regional meeting lists. If and when the sales transactions of our regional meeting directory chairperson happens when the region meets in a city in an area that's in Massachusetts, they pay tax to that body. If it happens in one of the times that we are meeting in Rhode Island, it happened, we pay tax in that state. But the 501c3 status is a federal issue as opposed to the individual state tax issues. So for an area to borrow a 501c3, it doesn't necessarily obviate the need to pay sales tax at the local level.
Thank you. Sandy?
So I think the complexities of having a 501c3 or an EIN number or a incorporated or using someone else's tax exempt status, what that means federally, state-wise, have been very well explained by everybody, so that's great. So my question is, though, for me, in being a self-supporting organization, why are we trying to get out of paying sales tax? We are part of our community. We should be paying our whatever % sales tax. And is this really something that NA should be doing, is manipulating the law or trying to manipulate the law in possibly illegal ways to avoid paying sales tax, which, you know, we're members of our community. So anyway, so that's my 2 cents. I always discourage that when people try to get out of paying sales tax. I'm like, why? Why are you trying to get out of paying sales tax?
Thank you. Karen?
Hey, Karen. So I am the RCM of the Philadelphia area. For the greater Philadelphia region, I'm part of the autonomy zone. So our area, we do have the 501c3 tax exempt from our region. So I just wanted to share our experience as an area having that 501c3 tax exempt from the region. We do not put on conventions, so we don't have it for that purpose. The purpose that we have borrowed it for is to open our own bank account and have the 501c3 tax exempt for our bank account banking purposes. And especially in this pandemic climate with Venmo and Zelle and PayPal and the fees that go along with electronic transfers. We've had it for some time, but to be able to pay our bills electronically, to be able to collect donations electronically, PayPal charges a fee for donations, and they charge less for a 501c3. So that's the purpose of us having the 501c3 from region. It has nothing to do with not charging Philadelphia or Pennsylvania sales tax at any events that we may or may not hold. It's all about our banking fees, transfer fees, things like that when we collect donations from our groups and individuals, and transfer fees when we pay our bills. But that's our experience down here in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Stephen, do you feel that you had your questions answered? Do you have any further questions you'd like to ask?
I don't believe so. I think what I would like to the experience we heard from the Philadelphia area made a ton of sense, and it seems to be quite practical use of the tax exempt status from their respective region. I do feel as a member of society, we simply just pay what we need to pay. I've never been the one to kind of, look for ways to not pay things and settle things out. And I think that we need to have some direction from our region as well. I think a steering committee would behoove us in this case. I think speaking to an accountant would help in this case as well. What we were really looking for, and I believe we received, the RDA can certainly speak in, and we can recognize the regional treasurer if need be, is that we wanted some experience, strength, and hope, which we received. And we also wanted to demonstrate that the zone could be quite useful to our region all the way down to the area levels. And I think we've certainly done that up until this point. And we really appreciate the time being allowed for this. And like I said, if the RDA wants to jump in with anything, she certainly may. And we do work as a team. So looking forward to the rest of the weekend. And I love all of you very much. And thank you for letting me share.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'm an addict, Sarah. I think that the core of what we were trying to ask was really for some experience, strength, and hope from other areas, regions that have encountered the situation, not trying to minimize the opportunity for other places to pay said sales tax, but looking at NA as a nonprofit organization, and the areas in our region looking at their opportunity to utilize the tax exempt status has been something that has been quite a challenge for our region to have some understanding of. So I appreciate the conversation and the feedback. I will definitely be reaching out to some of you for our insight, for additional insight and experience. I think we need to have a committee and some additional conversation. I would ask if Matt wanted to say anything or if he had any additional questions. I know there's different people we can reach out to, but I didn't know if he has anything that he wanted to add.
Go ahead.
I don't really have any other questions. I appreciate all the experience, strength, and hope from you guys with this. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just grateful that we were able to have the people that we were from our region as a participant and be able to have this conversation discussed today, because it's, I just can't emphasize how important this has been to our region, because this specific topic is holding up one of our areas even from donating to our region just because of the lack of understanding. So sometimes us being able to bring things like this to the zone is so important to hear the different feedback from other regions. So just thank you for the time.
Thank you. Awesome. Glad we could be of service. Okay, next topic. Actually, I bumped up NESNA because I can imagine this one should be relatively brief. It's more of a broadcast of information, maybe a few questions. And then the topic after that is one that I could see eating up most of all of the rest of our time. So I see Sam wandering around in his icy background. Sam, you want to speak about NESNA briefly and then maybe field some questions?
Hey, yeah, totally. Hey, I'm Sam. I'm an addict. and the Northeastern State Service Symposium of NA is taking place May 21st through 23rd, 2021 at Boston Peabody Marriott. It's a stone's throw from Logan Airport in Boston. And we're looking, yeah, thanks, Adam. Adam just put the website in the chat, and registration is open now officially. We just got the website spruced up. We just got the website spruced up on this past week, so you can book a hotel room, register for the event, and purchase merchandise. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Northeastern State Service Symposium of NA is a multi-regional effort. It is hosted by New England region, Northern New England region, and the Western New York region recently signed on and has been participating, and other regions within the Northeast Zonal Forum are considering participation. And really, this is a service symposium to serve the Northeast Zonal Forum member regions. So we basically want to figure out how we spread the word, how we make sure that your local fellowships are aware of the event, how we get especially delegates in the Northeast Zonal Forum, but like all regional trusted servants, RCMs, areas to attend the event. I can't share my screen, but we've got I can put a flyer or an image in the chat and send it out with the minutes, but oh, I'm a co-host now. Look at that. Let me share my screen here. So this is nesna.org. There's flyers, May 21st through 23rd, Boston Peabody Marriott in Peabody, Mass, which is near Logan. You can register for the event, make a contribution, hotel link, merchandise. So it's a real thing. It's really happening. And we're in the middle of programming, and we're going to have programming information on the website soon, and what participation looks like for those on this call and your local fellowships there's plenty of ways to participate. You can join our work group. We're going to need help planning and executing the event here in the next 8 months. Just attending the event, we have a programming survey that's available for you all to help us prioritize what workshop topics we want to see at the service symposium, and really that's about it. So I don't know if people have any questions or what, but happy to field them.
And real quick for clarity, because this has been actually mentioned before, NESNA is open to participation from the regions and members of Autonomy Zone too, correct?
Yeah, I did a presentation for the Autonomy Zonal Forum, and they're considering participating too.
Just want to make that clear to everyone present.
I mean, it's the event itself is open to anybody. I mean, it's a service symposium, and we hope everyone comes. But
right.
Yeah.
Any questions for Sam? Okay. Moving on, COVID-related meeting home group challenges, and this is specific to the meeting level, the group level, not area, not region, not zone. This is specific to groups running into politics, issues following public and facility guidelines, pop-up meetings, militant members, getting the word out, a whole host of specific challenges within COVID or COVID-related meeting challenges. We had multiple members bring this up. Would one of the members from last night want to speak to your experience on why you brought this up? I know there was, yeah, this came up with almost every RD last night. Someone want to start? Bueller?
Well, I guess I'm ABCD, so I brought it up first. But I guess it's just like, what does the region, like what should the region and the areas be doing, if anything? Or should we just be letting the groups figure this out on their own about what is the right thing to do? Or should we be trying to provide some guidance to the areas so they can provide some guidance to the groups? You know, I just know, you know, I know how my home group goes, but I hear, you know, at region reports and then from other members about this meeting is doing this, and I won't go to that meeting anymore because they're doing that. And it's just like, we have to stay within our traditions. I think that's a little bit of the trickiness of this topic, is because we want to stay within our traditions. So, you know, the third tradition and group autonomy and group conscience and all that stuff. But at the same time, we obviously have to follow the facility guidelines or we'll lose the meeting spot, obviously. But what about like state guidelines, you know, which honestly aren't really enforced, you know? I don't know. And then the pop-up meetings, as far as I'm concerned with that, they, you know, they're not in the meeting schedule, so they can do what they want. If somebody wants to have a meeting at their house or in their backyard, there's nothing the area or region can really give with guidance on that, because they're just what I would call renegade meetings. And so, you know, if you want to have a meeting at your house, it's kind of a bummer, because I'd hate to see, you know, it fills the gap, but of course it becomes just the group of people who are invited to that meeting. It's not at all a welcome meeting because it's at somebody's house, but it has been filling, or in a park, or these sort of pop-up or renegade meetings. But anyway, I don't really know where the line is where the region should take somebody out of the meeting schedule. I mean, that's pretty drastic. How to stay within our traditions and still follow the laws and the guidelines of the facilities, and where do we bleed out into the NA as a whole? The tradition I always call the codependent tradition, right? Where do I really affect other people? You know what I mean? So it's a very tricky topic. So anyway.
Thank you. Tommy?
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? I'm the area chair as well for Suffolk area, and I got a phone call yesterday. I don't know. I'm sure it's not a unique situation, but we have one group that meets, and they were able to go back to their church and open the meeting back up, but there's no internet service, no Wi-Fi. Nobody has an understanding of a hotspot or how to use it. So a group of members wanted to stay on Zoom, and because of whatever reasons, which are all valid, they don't want to go to the meeting. They have compromised immune systems or whatever. But on the meeting list coordinator, you know, couldn't put it on there, because if you just, you know, a hybrid meeting means that you have one meeting that you're going to go to face to face, or you're going to go to on Zoom. So if you would have put, you know, meets virtually, there's two meetings that are in existence, and you know, you're not going to one meeting, you'll be going to one or the other. So if somebody's celebrating on, you know, at the place, and you go on Zoom, you're not at that meeting, you're at another meeting. So and on the meeting list, they couldn't put it as virtual also. So I mean, I suggested that you know, put another name to the group, which they weren't really thrilled about, you know, Pamphlets to Freedom Online. And you know, that seems to be, I'm sure it's going to happen with other meetings where groups, you know, they're split and they're all home group members. They have one business meeting, but they'll be like running two meetings. And, you know, just so I told them, the webmaster, maybe you could just put, you know, open up another box on the meeting list. But, you know, there was some controversy. It was going back and forth for like 3 weeks before he even got to me as the area chair, because they wanted to bring it onto the area floor. I said, no, that's the subcommittee for the meeting list coordinator. You know, handle it there first, and then if there's a problem. So, I mean, I'm sure this is going to happen. There's no, you know, there's no precedent to follow. It's a new atmosphere, so there's no policies in place. So I'm sure it's an opportunity to start to direct them to make a policy to say, you know, if, you know, hybrid meeting, and, you know, or just to determine what kind of meetings that we have and that are available. So that was just one thing that I knew that happened. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Bob?
Yeah, I'm sure everybody knows a little something about this topic, but so this also, so the COVID related meeting and home group challenges, I mean, part of this I think plays into that thing that came up in the conference participant discussion with Australia again, wanting to kind of nail down, you know, virtual meeting registrations and stuff like that. And this is one of the reasons why I felt I'm glad as a conference we decided not to get into that specifically, because we do not yet know on an area and regional level the experience of how this thing is going to shake out. And we want to be basing the movement at the world level based on the experience of the entire fellowship. I mean, prior to COVID, there were less than 100 virtual meetings in the United States. Now there's all these, you know, who knows how many thousand. And yeah, as far as like the region, I mean, of course, we always want to be very sensitive about governance or making it even sound like we're trying to tell people how to do something. I mean, of course, addicts get crazy when, you give them like a piece of solid suggestion, but you know, the region definitely has a responsibility of effective communication and just basically saying, these are the things that are going on and this is what's out there, and not telling anybody, you know, we're not NA police, so we're not gonna, you know, tell a meeting, you know, what to do, but we do have a responsibility to tell them what's going on. And from the very beginning, I'm proud to say the Greater New York region, you know, has been posting things on its webpage, just basically telling people this is the lay of the land and this is what we're hearing from other entities. We're not telling anybody to do anything, but it's really important that we communicate to the members, this is what's going on. I mean, you know, listen to like, what are the CDC recommendations on social distancing, or have you read those recommendations that are, these are laws. They're not like NA things. I mean, this is the law of like it within New York City and things of that nature. So yeah, it's all going on. And on the same hand, the groups are figuring it all out for themselves. So I think it's kind of a balance between, one, effective communication, and two, realizing that, you know, we have a lot of members with their ear to the ground, both, you know, what's going on within the fellowship and in general society. And, you know, it tends to be working out well. And the situations, I would never call a meeting renegade. I mean, you know, the Greater New York region, how we're listing meetings and giving out information is we're taking leads from the areas of like, is this recognized from the area? And the region is not, you know, we're just taking information and facilitating information.
Thank you. And briefly, I added the word physical because when this was brought up as a topic, it was specifically within the context of physical meeting challenges, because a lot of the challenge in that was the politics and following public and facility guidelines and militant members. And I can speak, like my home group actually has a challenge with some of the members that don't want to follow the church guidelines, the church requirements, or the local requirements or the state requirements, because their politics tells them that those requirements aren't valid, therefore they don't have to follow them. Therefore, any consequences that come from that are invalid and shouldn't even affect NA, and they're outside issues entirely. So if the requirements are invalid and they consider the consequences invalid, that's a lot of where I think this is circling around. Mickey?
We're having the same problem with prison ministry as we're having with NA. But I believe where we're at right now is we have to reimagine service in Narcotics Anonymous and not try to be so focused on what the policy and rules are. In our area service, it felt like anarchy to most of the members. We have 20 groups in our area that have opened for live meetings, and probably another 20 groups that are virtual. And of the live meetings, our home group practices complete COVID rules, mask, social distancing. no touching, everything else. Another group in our facility, in the same facility on Friday nights, brings in 40 people. They don't have masks. They don't practice anything. And each group is claiming their own grounds. We're at an area right now where Narcotics Anonymous as a fellowship is changing in not only just how do we serve, how do we meet, how do we come together, how do we bring the fellowship together, the questions about home groups, virtual home groups now in our area that met once or twice a week with 5 members now have a Zoom meeting with 100 members from all over the world, trying to determine which groups are actually members of our area. We're changing and metamorphosizing. The example I use, because I'm a tree guy, is if we looked at the situation of we're going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, we're in a cocoon right now, and we're really not going to know how we evolve through this until we get a little farther through. I know when I served at World Service, we used to always say our responsibility as regional representatives was to have our finger on the pulse of group conscience of all the groups in our region. And right now, to try to have your finger on the pulse of the groups, it feels like a heart attack because there's so many different pulses. But we're coming through a transition, and we have to be very, very open to seeing where we're going as a fellowship. I know the work we're doing in public relations seems to change on a monthly basis. What are we doing in public relations? It's most important. Our first responsibility was to get the virtual meeting list out to everybody. Our next responsibility was to start to reaching out to professionals and let them know how to contact us. Now our responsibility on the area level is trying to reach out to facilities and find locations for groups. We have to have our finger on the pulse. And right now, that's not easy. Right now, the pulse is kind of erratic. This is where it takes patience. I believe we need to have patience, a lot of open-mindedness, and evolve to who we're supposed to be. I honestly believe the Northeast Zonal Forum is going to become a primary key service component in how to serve the groups. And all of the zones are, because we're closer to that pulse. And the regional delegates, from what I've seen, are doing a wonderful job in reaching out and contacting, but it's going to evolve, and it's evolving into something where we're going to have to be willing to be open and see where we're going. That's all.
Thank you. Beautifully put. John?
I'm an addict named John. Thanks to everyone that shared before me. And I've got similar sentiments to what Nikki said. I think that this has the potential, the zonal forum, to be something good for our areas and regions because it's closer to home and not so far away, and we could provide some services. But on to the topic that we're talking about, the area that I live in has had all this stuff going on. I mean, we had the police get called to a meeting a couple of weeks ago because there was a fist fight over this stuff where, you know, somebody punched someone in the parking lot over this whole, all this nonsense, the COVID nonsense, you know. It's come down to, you know, craziness. And some people had called me about it. And, you know, I had to really dig deep and look at the traditions for all this and see, okay, what can we do about this? You know, what can't we do about it? Where do we get involved? Where's the line drawn where it is, you know, the 4th tradition and the 5th tradition where the group primary purpose is to provide the atmosphere of recovery so a meeting can happen. And the 4th tradition, giving them the autonomy to be able to do that, you know, without affecting NA as a whole in the long run or even in the short run. And all of these issues are right there. I think that a meeting that, you know, like the church where our home group, we're meeting face to face, their guidelines are that we have to wear a mask when we go into the meeting. The seats all need to be 6 feet apart. You know, we can't have any coffee or any of that stuff. And we're allowed to have capacity that the room normally would hold. So we can only have 25 people there because the room normally holds 50. But once we're sitting down, we can take our masks off. That's the church's guidelines. And I think that that's also some of the states as well. And we're following those guidelines. Now, there's people that come in there that don't have a mask because their political beliefs have them thinking something different. And I'm not going to get into my own opinion on my political stuff. All I'm going to say is that I'm willing to put aside whatever I think about for NA. And I think really that's what, you know, in the long run, what we're going to have to do to get to the other side of this, if we ever have a hope of being able to get back to having a regular face-to-face meeting. We have 55 meetings a week in our area. We only have about 10 or 12 meeting face-to-face, and some of the rest have navigated to Zoom, and some of them just don't ever care to be. Some of the churches, for some of the home groups, are telling them, most especially the Catholic churches, they're not going to let them meet until they come up with a viable vaccine for this. They're just not gonna. They're not gonna take the chance. And so we're struggling to find places to have meetings. You know, home groups are calling up everywhere, and everyone's telling them no. You know, so this is definitely a topic that I think is very important right now. You know, 10 months ago, no one would even have cared. I don't even think, you know, it would have been an issue. Now it's become one of the biggest challenges facing, you know, Narcotics Anonymous that I can remember in the whole time I've been here. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris.
I'm an addict. My name is Chris. I'm not going to share anything totally different than what everyone else has already kind of echoed. I just want to talk about like what our region has been doing. Our web servant, when meetings get listed as going back to either hybrid or in person, he asks them a few questions, and every member takes these questions differently. Some of them get offended that he's even asking, and others like don't seem to have an issue. Some of the questions he asks, are you following these protocols? Is a mask required? Are there chairs set up? And the reason why he asks these type of questions, because on the meeting list itself on the website, you can see like tonight at this morning at 7:30 a.m. This is in Massachusetts. Please wear a mask, follow social distance protocols, stay at home if you are sick. Because that's the responses that the group gave him. So he's putting the information out there so people know in advance before they go to that meeting that this meeting you have to wear a mask, this meeting you don't. Now, my opinion, if we should follow guidelines, I mean, I think we should, but I'm not an oversight committee, right? I don't have a badge. I'm not giving out violations of fines for groups that don't listen. Before COVID, if I went to an NA meeting and they closed with the Lord's Prayer, or someone said sober 10,000 times, did I lose it? No. You know, my home group, we talk about these issues and we deal with it at my home group. That's it. You know, the groups are going to do what they do. And I think for our sake, the best thing that we could do was just make sure we have the resources for them. Give them the guidelines, the most up-to-date guidelines that we can. If they choose not to follow it, that's not on us. Also include those guidelines. Hey, every single member is a representation of NA, and as a result, an extension of PR. So like, it would be in our best interest to follow them. If you choose not to, that's your choice. And if there is a fist fight in the parking lot, I mean, I as long as they wear a mask, I guess it's okay. That's a joke. But we can't control what they do. And I mean, me personally, like if someone showed up in my home group and said, you need to be doing it this way, I'm going to be offended by that. So if they showed up and said, here's some resources, take them with a grain of salt. You want to follow them, great. If you want to apply this program, if you want to live these traditions, please do, but we can't force you. You know, this is a terrible time for NA and the world in general. We don't know what we're doing. We're kind of feeling our way through it. We're doing our best. Some people are going to listen and some aren't. And that's the acceptance piece that we kind of have to deal with. That's all.
Thank you. Karen?
So so I have a lot more questions than I do statements, and I guess my questions are related to what's going on here in the city of Philadelphia. And I guess it's because, so the area that I represent is one of the larger areas in our region, and we have roughly 40 meeting in person right now. And we have some areas in the Philadelphia region that are completely 100% virtual because they've already had COVID outbreaks when they tried to meet. So their areas have completely shut down again and have gone completely virtual. As of October 13th, the city of Philadelphia put out brand new guidelines, brand new mandates for any social gathering, any event. We were at a 25 person limit. Now we're at a 10% capacity for fire, a 10% person of fire code capacity. So if your facility has a fire code capacity of 150 people, that means you can only have 15 people present in your building. So there's certain facilities, we have one facility that's called the Graveyard that has like 4 meetings in it right now, that is still holding 25 people that per our mandate cannot hold 25 people. The new mandates also require mandatory contact tracing, which is an issue for a lot of groups. A lot of people don't want to give up their information. They don't want to say who they are or their telephone number or any of that stuff. We have a mandate of masks, all that, the moment you leave your home. And these mandates of how many people can gather apply to houses. They apply to people gathering inside a home, apply to anywhere, whether it's a church, anything. And as of this past week, the health department and the police have been going to facilities, banging on doors and shutting stuff down. I spoke to someone yesterday who they snuck people out of a back door because the health department was banging on the door. So they dimmed the lights, pretended like no one was there, and snuck everyone out the back door because that facility was supposed to be closed. So, because they're finding people shutting places down, stuff like that, because Philadelphia is now at its largest number ever since March, since this whole thing started. We're at its largest number ever. But we have members and groups saying they can do whatever they want because the fourth tradition. Each group is autonomous. However, when this starts happening, it does affect NA as a whole. When churches start getting fined, when places start getting shut down, it does affect NA as a whole. And yes, like other people have said, we don't have badges, we don't have police. Granted, at one of my anniversaries, a friend of mine did give me a little NA police badge as a joke. I do feel like this is one of those times that we should all start pulling that out. Again, a joke. But I don't know what we do as an area, as a region, to prevent this from happening. How do I prevent further groups from having to dim the lights and sneak people out of a back door? This health department woman called the police. Someone sat across the street this health department woman apparently sat there for 3 hours, called the police and tried to have the police kick the door in. So how do I prevent situations like this in the future? How do I make this apparent? There have been conversations among other RCMs about removing groups that aren't following guidelines from our meeting list, which removes them from insurance. I don't know how I feel about that, and I don't think that particularly matters in this situation at this point. My opinion, at least, on that. It's just a very, very hot button topic. And our region doesn't even meet again until December. So I'm just at a loss. Any help at this point is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. James?
Hi again, everyone. Attic named James. So, Adam, I just want to acknowledge you for sharing that really wonderful checklist about reopening meetings, and it succinctly touches the three traditions that are at play. The fourth tradition, the full fourth tradition, groups are autonomous except when actions affect other groups or NA as a whole. The 10th tradition, which avoids us being drawn into public controversy, and the 12th tradition of practicing spiritual principles in all our affairs. We in the New England region have a kind of cowboy men's meeting, a long-standing cowboy men's meeting that meets in Watertown on Wednesday nights. One of the first to resume meeting in person. They brought the chairs outside so that they could adapt to the larger state-allowed guidelines, and then moved inside as soon as that was possible. And you know, one of the biggest issues that we have is when members attract the attention of state and local officials, like you're talking about, and that can blow up into a PR nightmare faster than we can imagine. The other question is you know, a hugely spiritual one. I haven't heard really anyone talk about that, which is if the newcomer is the most important person in the room, and you have a fixed number of people that can be in a room, and all of your, you know, your crusty old timers that are in the meeting are in the front row, and this is my meeting, and you know, there's no more seats allowed, and a newcomer shows up. How do you handle that? Do you tell the newcomer to go away? Do you have a plan that maybe the most experienced members in the room get up and give their seat to a newcomer? You know, try telling that to somebody that this is my meeting, you know, and so there's a huge spiritual cost to the newcomer in those situations. Not saying that we have that worked out by any stretch of the imagination, but we have to remember that the newcomer is the most important person in the room. And what message are we carrying when we don't follow the guidelines? Karen, I thank you for sharing about Philadelphia. I mean, nationally, yesterday was the single most new infections reported during this entire pandemic. Now, you know, that's terrifying to me. You know, I work in the health professions, and that no matter what you look at, that's a trend that we need to be aware of. And so, you know, it's really, really challenging. It's you know, the epidemiologists that my business pays attention to are saying that this is now a third wave, and we have the unique challenges also in Boston, in Massachusetts. We have so many colleges and universities, and it's looking like a shutdown, a new shutdown is looming on the horizon. So we need to grapple with this, and grapple with it fast. Thanks.
Thank you. And real quick, so I was going to say something after James anyways, but we got two more people on the list. Some of my experience locally is touching on what can we do as an area. Do we remove them from the list, and what does that do? Especially if you have insurance. My experience with insurance is if someone's listed on your meeting list, they're on your insurance, you are then liable for everything they do. So if they get fined, they get sued, something happens, your area now takes a hit, and all the groups in the area now take the hit for what the actions of some addicts, and go figure, addicts sneaking people out the back. We've never done that before. Go figure, we carry some of our behaviors in here when we want to do what we want to do, and we don't consider the consequences valid. We do the same thing over again, expecting different results because it's us. It's going to be different this time. So locally, I haven't had to yet, but I've had to bring it up, which has gotten some blowback. I'm PR chair for the local area. And if it's found that you're not following the guidelines, you'll be removed from the meeting list because you do affect NA as a whole at that point. If you want to meet, no one can stop any addicts from getting together to meet anywhere. But if you want to meet and be part of our area, part of a greater whole, then because we are required to meet all laws of society, you need to do that alongside the rest of us because we bear your consequences right alongside of you. And there's something else I was going to say in there and I forgot it. So Kathleen?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Kathleen Addick. I just wanted to and I'm driving, so I apologize if there's any interference with the driving. And I wanted to speak or say something to the young woman who is from Philadelphia. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I don't know if this would be helpful to you or not, but back in May, it was May 12, 2020, a letter was received from Gloria Gallagher, and she had, actually it was an email, and it was on behalf of the Commonwealth Department of Drug and Alcohol Program, DDAP, and it was regards to recovery meetings. If you like, I can forward that email to you. It has her contact information on it, and she may be helpful with the situation that you're dealing with in Philadelphia. If you need my number, Lavina or Dennis can actually put it in the chat because I don't know how to do that from my phone. Also, the other thing that I wanted to mention is that in our area, we were considering not so much guidelines, but drawing up a statement, because there were some meetings that were being held in our area that were not following CDC guidelines. And the concern was insurance. We had contacted our insurance, and they said that they don't cover any incidents for COVID-19 because this, which to some degree makes sense. It's a pandemic. This is a new thing for everyone, across, country. And that led us to even feel more concerned because what if there was required contact tracing or somebody, any kind of legality that could come up? The fact that the insurance would not cover it was a concern. So we had considered drawing up a statement for our area. We didn't follow through with it only because things seemed to improve. There were face-to-face meetings. Meetings started opening up, but that conversation has come up again in our area. What kind of statement? Something that could help protect, the area in the event a group makes a decision not to follow state or federal guidelines that are being placed for the pandemic. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Adam?
My name is Adam. I'm an addict, and there's been so much, and obviously this is a huge, broad topic. Some things I wanted to mention. First of all, James, thank you for the props on that checklist for our region. But I will say, I think 95% of that came from the New England Regional PR Committee. So I think I kind of just adapted it a little bit specifically to mention Connecticut insurance and et cetera, et cetera. I could tell you what we did find out about insurance because we obviously spoke to our insurance carrier. To touch on that subject was that not that COVID-19 it's not covered because our insurance carrier said it's not provable. There's no way any lawyer, well, I shouldn't say there's no way. He was pretty sure that nobody would try to make a case that somebody caught COVID at an NA meeting and that their medical treatments are required because of that, because it's just not provable that they got it there specifically. So that's what our insurance carrier told us. So he said, so don't even worry about meetings being open and the possible risks of somebody getting it and then trying to file a claim against our insurance. One of the biggest, so when this first started, after about probably, well, let's see, it was like March 19th, I think, Connecticut went into shutdown, pretty much somewhere in that neck of the woods. And we had, I think we were just meeting that weekend. And so I think it was the following month in April, the middle of April, we met, and we were finding out that at this point, literally 99% of the meetings in Connecticut had shut down because of all the restrictions. And unfortunately, we were only hearing from a small fraction of them. So we had tons of meetings up on our website that had told us they switched to virtual. But we had even more that just never notified us of anything. So the region made a decision to unlist every in-person meeting in the state, even though some people specifically knew some were still meeting. There's a meeting in my town that continued to meet through the whole pandemic, even when the restrictions were no more than 6 people at a gathering. They continue to meet, and they never had more than 6 during that time because most people were not going out. So anyway, that was a decision the region made, and it wasn't until I guess it was probably the phase 1 reopenings when things started to loosen up and and people were allowed to start meeting outside. It was now the middle of summer that we made a decision to start listing in-person meetings again. However, we specifically required groups to let us know that they were meeting. We weren't just gonna start listing them again. It was, if your group is meeting, you need to let us know. You need to fill out the meeting information form on our website and let us know that you're meeting. And then we started listing them. One of the biggest issues we had, I'm regional PR chair for Connecticut, and I reached out to the governor's office, the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services office, to like 2 different departments in the Department of Mental Health and Addiction Services, reached out to various health organizations in the state. We were trying to find out where do we fit in the reopenings, because what happened here is the restrictions for private indoor gatherings was only like 10 people. However, the restrictions on religious, spiritual, or worship gatherings was 25 or 25% of capacity, something like that. 25% of capacity up to like 100 or something along those lines. So of course, many of our members started the argument, well, we're spiritual gatherings, so we fit under that, so we can go up to 25 people or whatever the case may be. And of course, it was difficult to argue with those that actually met in churches. It was those meetings that didn't meet in churches that were like, well, they say that we're spiritual gatherings, so we fit, but you're not in a church. It was, so the logic was somewhat flawed. But that discussion was going on. Now we're actually in phase 3 in Connecticut, although we're spiking in some towns. So we're now allowed up to 50% of capacity at indoor gatherings. If you might have heard Troy last night, we're almost 50-50 on meetings in person and meetings virtually now, at somewhere like close to 100 each, with a bunch still not meeting. So we have asked, and similar to what James said, the Connecticut web servants, when somebody sends in a meeting information form, our web servants are contacting them back, asking specifically about any kind of requirements. Are masks required? Is there a capacity limit? Are temperatures being taken? Contact tracing? And if the group gives that information, it's going on the website. We do use the BMLT, where we're using a field for that. It's showing up right on our website in bold red text for every meeting listing that provides that. So it's really obvious, masks required, outdoor, bring your own chair, whatever the case may be. Connecticut also, the governor decided that since people weren't following a lot of the restrictions, the governor decided to start being a little more proactive, I guess, in fining people. So there's a $500 fine if you're organizing a gathering that violates the maximum capacity, a $250 fine for participating in a gathering that violates it, and a $100 fine for not wearing your masks. we've been telling like the group secretaries, it's because there are a couple of groups that have been flirting with that limit, maybe going a little over, because nobody wants to tell somebody they can't come in. We've been telling some of these groups and specifically their secretaries, listen, we're not telling you not to do it, but you personally could be held liable as the group secretary and the person who's opening up the church or the facility, that if you exceed the capacity and they show up, you're going to get the $500 fine because you're the group secretary. And a lot of group secretaries are like, whoa, we need to bring this up at the next business meeting, right? Because nobody wants that. I heard also mention, sorry for going on, but obviously a lot of stuff's been shared I want to touch on. We have most of the meetings that I know of that do have a firm capacity limit. Well, I guess they all do, but you know, that it's not too large or whatever, have discussed that if somebody shows up and it's a newcomer, nobody really knows, or whatever the case may be, those established members, or most of them that I've talked to and that I've heard, are more than willing to give up their seat and say, you know what, have a seat, I'm going home. That's been the case. I have not heard any person personally, even the stodgiest old members say, I'm not giving up my seat, this is my meeting, I earned it as much as anybody. I've not heard that. That doesn't mean there aren't those people out there, but I haven't heard that yet. So I think that's about all I got. Obviously it's you know, every situation is different, every state is different. I mean, I feel kind of fortunate that our region is just the one state. So like from that kind of standpoint, we don't have to deal with like in New England, they got to deal with the Rhode Island laws and the Massachusetts laws, you know, stuff like that. And those are different. I mean, we can't even I mean, we're like the next state over, and we're not allowed to travel to Rhode Island for more than 24 hours unless we got to self-quarantine when we get home for 14 days. And it's like, it's 45 minutes from my house. So anyway, yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, Adam. I'm going to hear from Jim and then close up this topic. And real quick, just to point out the schedule for today. Open forum is closing here in a few minutes. Going to hear from Jim. And then also there was another topic on the queue. I was going to let James speak to briefly just to get the topic out there into our consciousness. And then our next workshop is at noon, Carrying Our Message Through Planning, which is a collaboration between Northeast Zonal Forum and Autonomy Zone on coming up with ideas on how we can best work together for supporting our region's areas services. Then we have 2 o'clock when delegates are at their best. That is an RD-AD workshop. Any past, present RDs are welcome. Actually, everyone's welcome to observe. Participation will be RD-AD only because it'll be gathering experience. So if you want to hear the experience of delegates, you're welcome to jump in there and listen in. That'd be great. And then 4 o'clock, we have COVID-related service challenges, going everything from group down to world. And then this evening, we have Family Feud and Bingo. So here's the schedule for the day. Now, Jim.
Hey, everybody, Jim Addict. That I've been hearing from the very beginning of the COVID crisis, when we were trying to figure out how to best respond. What's come across since March is there is not a one-size-fits-all approach that NA can take. As everybody said, you know, it differs from state to state. Not only does it differ from state to state, it differs from county to county. Here in New York State, you know, the best resource is forwardnewyork.gov. And you know, many other states have similar websites where the protocols and policies that institutions that have reopened face-to-face must follow. And I'm going to emphasize the word must. You know, I hear a lot about the generalizations about addicts who don't like to follow direction and do things on their own and things like that. But as everybody already stated, you know, protocols and practices regarding to COVID crisis and reopening, they're not optional. They are a matter of law. And if we don't adhere to them, it can negatively impact the image of NA as a whole. Here in Erie County, it's been up and down, up and down. Right now, if you use a faith-based organization as your NAICS code for reopening, people are saying that's 33% of the capacity of the church indoors for people. But if they don't read on, it also means 33% of that capacity must be able to social distance with no less than 6 feet. They must have cleaning. They must have sanitation. They must have a managed way to collect names for contact tracing. And these are not optional. Go to an NA meeting. I've stopped in at quite a few. None of them are taking names and contact information as required by law for social, for contact tracing should an instance of COVID come up. And it comes down to the group. And as Adam says, here in the States, New York, they're starting to find people. And the home group offices, the secretary, the chair, however that home group is set up, they're going to be subject to the fine if the public health department comes in. And they are starting to do it now to curb the spikes that they're seeing across, at least here in New York. I can't talk for other states, but if we stay on top of things, we know that this is not going away anytime soon. We need to hold ourselves responsible and accountable to the public health orders within our counties. And all you need to do is go to your public health department, whatever your county is, DOH, COVID-19, and it will give you a process to figure out the capacity and the requirements within your county, which are changing regularly. So it's up to us to constantly take a look at it, and hopefully we will get back to brick and mortar with safety in mind sooner than later. Thanks for letting me share.
Thanks for sharing. And briefly onto online development, specifically non-COVID related. This was raised as a topic last night. James, do you want to speak to that briefly? So people can be thinking of it. You're muted.
Yes, I am. I'm an addict. My name is James. The thing I wanted to bring up was shared by Chris earlier, is that while certain virtual or sort of online, I'm trying to get away from just calling them virtual meetings, they're NA meetings that happen to meet online. There have been several groups that have popped up as legit, well-organized, regularly scheduled NA meetings, and they exist strictly virtually. And there is a meeting in our region on Thursday evening to talk about the formation of a virtual area. So while it technically came during this period of COVID, it's really a development in the fabric of online meetings. So I just wanted to put that out there for people.
Okay, thank you. And that concludes the open forum. I'll go ahead and leave this up here.